How is again? It's Saturday, some feckin' date in the middle of May 2020, as we continue this discourse known as the Corona Chronicles, or the Chronicles, or whatever you want to call it. Or in the middle, the lockdown continues. There's lots of interesting news today and things to talk about. The European soccer finally kicked off again with Dortmund, one of the biggest clubs in the world, playing in one of the biggest stadiums in Europe, empty, playing Schalke 04. And it's just very strange watching these games inside these empty stadiums. I just had a look at the Leipzig were playing Hertha Berlin. These are all huge clubs, and the stadiums are just empty, and it's just weird. It looks like watching a training session or a friendly. It's just so strange. And I don't know. At least, I mean, it's good to see there's something there to keep people watching. But it's still not. It's still not. It's not normality. It's not comforting really. It's for people. It's a kind of a medication that doesn't really work or something like that. I've noticed. Now, I want to say something. I got a few questions about this. People said to me, then there's a videos going around that that Trump said he would use the US military to distribute vaccines in the autumn. That's not the same thing as having you held down and being injected, okay? Don't jump to those conclusions. He said he would use it to distribute, use the US military's logistic systems. And a lot of that could be just politics, just to pander to people, to give them hope. Oh, according, because you may have a problem with this stuff. But remember, there's far more people. The people you're surrounded by in your neighborhood are begging for the vaccine, so he has to play politics too. Just don't be confusing your worldview with the rest of society. We're the freaks, and always remember that. And speaking of freaks, I see that Greta Thunberg one is just unbelievable. I mean, it's like, okay. She's a kid with autism, and she's being exploited by her parents. But the fact that the same establishment that says things to you like, "Oh, people who only have scientific qualifications should be allowed to talk about public policy on health and everything else," except a 17-year-old Swedish high school dropout with autism. This is what we're dealing with. We're seeing this kind of, empty is a good analogy for what we're seeing at the moment. I saw you saw that the health authority person in Los Angeles looks like a corpse. That's someone took a hairdryer to it. We see this over and over again. We've seen these health ministers or health experts, and also the elites themselves. They all look like death. They all look like they're falling to pieces. Then there's not one of them looks healthy looking, and yet they are the ones who, ironically, Trump looks the most healthy of all of them, and they are the ones who are just determining. Look at Gates. He's in bits. Look at his wife. And these are the people who are determining public health policy for the planet, and yet they look like corpses that someone took a hairdryer to. They look awful, and it's no wonder they're so concerned about the COVID-19 virus, because they're probably so unhealthy that they're at the biggest risk of all of dying. I've ever thought about that one. That they're so unhealthy that this virus it's all about keeping them alive, and trying to stop the spread, not for me and you, but for them. And today in London, in Hyde Park, the cops are currently right now arresting protesters against the lockdown. It's not helping in any way. And I tell you something, looking at the pictures, I think most of them are lefty shills who want the lockdown to continue, because that's all these protests are going to do. Give the politicians an excuse to continue the lockdowns. They say things like, and there's probably some truth to it. Well, you're not helping reduce the level of infection, and there's probably some truth to it. So that's and I look at the usual photographs, of the Hyde Park uh, protest is their usual upper middle class, left wing social worker types, or Labour councillor types. Like, remember the two that were on top of the train for Extinction Rebellion? Wherever they gone. Extinction Rebellion. On top of the train, the underground train in London that they were pulled off. One of them kicked a black guy in the face. Uh, Probably an anti-racist. He kicks a young black guy right in the face. Uh, they look like that. They have that look, and that's nearly always lefty shills. Most this way don't go to protests. It's all run by lefty shills, who are actually enforcing, more draconian measures to keep you imprisoned. The left wing are absolutely loving the lockdown because, in their stupid infantile minds, they think they're killing capitalism. They're not. They're killing the working class. That's who they're really killing, and the lower middle class. And so that what happened in Hyde Park right now at this moment. It's funny. The stadiums in Germany are empty for the beginning of football, but the parks in London are full for the protests. And these people are just going to be used as excuses to keep us all further locked down for longer. This is where the game is played. These are not heroes. These are, don't go to protests. Protests are all a big setup. Now, there's some interesting health news regarding this stuff coming out now. Now, last week, the New York Times and Live Science magazine had a paper that was published saying that in giving men estrogen might help reduce their chances of dying of coronavirus. And as soon as I saw the New York Times pushing this thing with a big article, I knew right there and then this was a globalist agenda. I mean, that's all that rag is. That rag is nothing else. This is the rag that said that Hillary Clinton was 99% favourite to win the election against Trump. 99% at his 1%. This is like, people should be reading the New York Times. It's other than for a laugh. But the New York Times is a total globalist rag. And when I saw this, I went, there's an agenda here. Of course there's an agenda. These are people who, you have to remember that the editors and writers of the likes of the New York Times, they want to have sex with Desmond is Amazing. Just remember that. These are the kind of people you're dealing with. They want to have sex. Do you remember that scene, that film, Diary of a Mad Housewife? There's a scene in it where the man is Richard Benjamin, I can't remember his name, but he's a very good actor. And they're throwing a party for all these New York insiders to influence them. And one of them is a New York Times journalist who's also a Pulitzer Prize winner. And he steals an antique lighter and puts it in his pocket and keeps it for himself. And these are like the upper echelon. It's a perfect example of what these people are like. But anyway, so they said that injecting men with estrogen, as if there's not already enough in the food and everything else, and the pharmaceuticals in the water from the pill being recycled, that would help them save them from coronavirus infection or dying from it, I said. So you had all these hysterical types, and no doubt running to their doctors in New York, where it's a city full of hypochondriacs, saying, "Please inject me with estrogen. Give me estrogen passages. I want to survive coronavirus." So now that was featured. That was like seriously promoted in America 2 weeks ago. Very seriously promoted by all the mainstream. Last week, yesterday it comes out that last week a real German scientific study said that people who died of the coronavirus quickly had elevated levels of estrogen. So it just makes it incredibly sinister, doesn't it? That it really brings the whole vegan thing into focus as well. The whole vegan fad, the whole vegan trends. It's like I can guarantee, because if you don't have enough testosterone in your system as a man, what you're lacking is kinetic energy, actual energy, strength. And you see these vegan fellas, they can't do anything. They can't pick up they hold hammers and screwdrivers weak, and they have weak handshakes. And of course they'll show a picture of an athlete who's like a vegan and is supposed to be, that's not your typical vegan any more than, any other athlete is typical of the population. And I think when this thing comes out, I think you'll have the majority, of course, it's killing old people, it's killing cancer patients, it's killing diabetics, but of the ones who didn't have pre-existing conditions, i.e. healthy ones, you're going to find that large percentage of them are vegans. I could nearly bet on it. and males as well. It's also killing more men than women. Now, there are horror stories emerging in places like Montreal. Montreal, for some reason, is having higher levels of deaths of coronavirus than any other city anywhere else, just about in one of the highest in the world. And some real horror stories came out that, like, in one retirement home, the staff ran away, terrified they were going to get coronavirus. And something like 13 residents were found dead a week later from things like septicemia. Their nappies, their diapers hadn't been changed, or their colostomy bags hadn't been emptied, and they just died alone in the retirement home. Now that's the first story I've heard regarding this whole event that has been kind of like an apocalyptic thing. It just goes to show you what fear can do to people. That they could leave all people to die in a home. Uh, it's the instinct of survival, and that's a horror story. That is, but again, I mean, we're living in times that are just hard to even consider. And that's just that in an advanced country like Canada, in a city like Montreal, the staff of an old people's home could run in terror and then 13 of the old people die in the home a week later of neglect. That's the first thing I've heard. That's like a 28 days later type scenario. And thank God things like that didn't happen. You see, what happens is when society breaks down, the old and the young, the babies are left to die. And you saw that with Ceausescu's Romania, all the babies that were just thrown in these awful orphanages, and they all the ones that survived had developmental issues and things like that. And the same with the old people. All the old people were killed in the Chinese Cultural Revolution. They were left to die. They were considered by the Chinese elites as useless eaters. And also, I firmly do believe that if there's a conspiracy to this, I'm not saying there is, but if it's a way of knocking the elderly out of the economy. Remember, like I said yesterday, in the United States, the elderly use up something like 90% of their healthcare, entire lives healthcare costs in the last 2 years of their lives. Also, they don't have to pay their pensions and things like that. And this is a lot of big money big money are doing very well from all these elderly people dying. Very well. But then again, lots of elderly people are surviving. So it does make you wonder about the vegan thing and the whole soy thing. And how many of these soy boys are dead? Like the ones who dropped this is why the scientific soy boys on things like I fucking love science websites is that the real reason they're the most terrified of COVID-19 of all? Because subconsciously they don't have an immune system to fight it. And it's like like I said, we're living in a bad Doctor Who episode. This brutality of life, humans are great at projecting, particularly like Westerners are great at projecting their idealism into fantasy and into other realms. But we don't acknowledge our shadow in the same degree, or not to the same degree. So, like, you look at like science fiction, popular science fiction, Star Wars, Star Trek. They were all about like cowboys in space, projecting human virtues into other worlds and races and beings. The American, like Star Trek was the American way, and Star Wars is the nation of Israel, Moses and all that, put into space. That's what the Jedi and all that kind of thing. With other idealistic notions of valor and knights. And then suddenly in the late 70s, things rapidly changed when you had the likes of Alien. And then science fiction became far more nihilistic, and space became a place of pain and suffering and slaughter and fear. And it had changed completely. And I often wondered why that idealism turned to nihilism and loathing very quickly. Well, it's because it's because at the end of the 70s, We were in the middle of the Cold War. We could nuke each other at any moment, and we realized that in many ways, we're always projecting our human faculties onto other races and beings, but like the band playing in Star Wars in the pub, this kind of thing. But now that we also project our darkest elements, and what you had in that elderly home in Montreal where they abandoned the old folks, that was like alien. That's what really when the chips are really down. This is why I tell you can't trust the normies. Yeah, they can be nice and pleasant and everything when things are going well, and when there's this is why they depend on their government so much. This is why they're out clapping every Thursday night. They know how fucking dangerous they are to themselves and the rest of us. But your normie neighbor who's very agreeable and friendly, what happened in Montreal can happen on your street. This is why these preppers and these people who prepared for the end times, they're the smart ones. It's not that you don't have faith in humans. You don't have. It's not that. It's just that you know that humans are made up of light and shadow, all of us, and the shadow of man and the lightness, the goodness of man, the light of man. When I say man, I mean humanity. Is extreme in both directions. Extreme in both directions. And so it only takes, as we see in like Montreal, like up until yesterday, until I read about the Montreal thing that happened, it was kind of like I'm dealing with this, but then that was the first peek into something really dark. And mark my words, your neighbours in England or wherever you live that are out clapping for the NHS every Thursday night, they're the ones who will come and kill you if there's a breakdown and they find that you have food. And that's why people are saying, oh, we should love all our neighbours and love one another. No, love your tribe. If one thing you've learned from this and watching my videos is the safeguarding of the tribe, that you need the tribe of your own kind, the soul tribe, the consciousness tribe of your own kind around you to protect you and to look after you, even if it's only helping you through videos and stuff like that. When I see those ones clapping for the NHS and banging pots with ladles and cheering, yeah, 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 I also see them with a butcher's knife in their hand, hammering down your door. If they know you have a can of soup after a food shortage, the same ones. Like I said, this is the greatest fucking education you're ever going to get. Ever. Pay attention and be aware. Learn. Now, there's lots of them. Like I said, the thing of the protesting in Hyde Park, that's and other places, they're almost certainly lefty shills who are loving the lockdown and want to give governments excuses to keep it going. There's a very good video I saw yesterday by a Swedish gentleman. I think the name of the channel was Sanity for Sweden, Sanity number 4 Sweden. And he made a brilliant point. It's basically what I've been saying for years too as well, but he made it even better. He said, just let these people speak and demonstrate what they are for themselves. You don't have to point it out or anything like that. They will always show themselves for what they are. Like Duper's Delight. The Duper's Delight thing is a thing that like most people, even if they don't know about what Duper's Delight it means, they subconsciously are aware of it. That grin, and the likes of Bill Gates talking about economic collapse and all this, he has a grin constantly. It's a Duper's Delight, and the more dark it gets, he looks kind of upwards and smirks. That's like the real Duper's Delight. And because he thinks he's fooled the world. This you can always tell. Like they grin like a Cheshire cat when they think they've fooled. They pulled the wool over people's eyes and got what they wanted, and it's a sign of extreme mental illness. It really is. It's quite frightening to watch because you really see how it's a way of seeing how mentally ill people are when they're grinning like a Cheshire cat in an attack mode. Like the way those awful snakes like pythons and anacondas, If they when they're about to strike, they have this grin, and it's almost like duper's delight on both sides. They have that look, and you can see how psychotic and toxic and dangerous they all are. And any sane person wants nothing to do with someone like that. And that's what this Swedish gentleman was saying. Let them keep doing it. Look at Ellen DeGeneres. She always has that look. And like her career's in bits now. Because of all people she worked for came forward and said the most horrible things about her. And you'd say, okay, it's just like a celebrity attack thing. But the details were so specific. And it kind, it's almost like it was, you're not surprised in some ways. And you had that gentleman, that Swedish guy, saying, just let them act, let the bureaucrats show what monsters they are. He goes, it's not that, he says, the people are more likely to wake up by just seeing these fuckers for what they are, that rather than anyone making videos about them. Like, putting posters up around Dublin with like New World Order and pictures of all seeing eyes and the Masonic G symbols and stuff, bullshit like that. Just let the fuckers talk for what they are. There's a video out there where quite clearly Bill Gates uses the term, and the final solution is the vaccine. He actually says the final solution. So you get insights all the time, like that health authority person in Los Angeles that looked like death, like a zombie. Like that, remember that Belgian health minister that was like, she was she was a mess, the woman. She was hugely overweight, where you couldn't even see, when they get so overweight you can't see their facial features anymore. It's like the eyes are like this. There's no distinction to their face. And yet she was the health minister for Belgium. And this is what they do. They do things like this all the time. They show themselves up for what they are. And the Norwegian government, for Norwegian Independence Day, did a TikTok type video, dance routine. And it's cringingly embarrassing to watch it. These people were once Vikings, as someone remarked. And just keep letting them do that. Keep letting them behave like that. Because eventually what they do is, like all these types, is they roll the dice once too many times and they crap out. That's why you sit back and you allow them to show the world what they really are themselves. No matter what they're saying about anyone or anything else, just sit back and say nothing. And let them show the world their true colours. And if they get what they think is one hit, they'll try and do another. But they don't understand that's who sane people are looking at that going, what the fuck is this shit? Like the TikTok dancing of the medical staff. The same thing. It's even they may have got the normie saying for a few days, oh, that's great, they're under pressure. But then when you saw that hacker one, remember the hacker one? Or the one carrying the body with COVID-19 written on the end of the body bag? That they always roll the dice one too many times. There's a great, you just think of the justice card in the tarot. The card is, it's natural justice. You get away for so long, but that's what the scales represent. But then the scale tips the other direction and natural forces kick in, and even the thickest normie will eventually say, "There's something not right about that." And you see how they've done that with Greta Thunberg, where they've made her a coronavirus expert. I mean, even people that would have supported her dumbass bullshit with the renewables, which is now shown to be crap anyway, are even saying, no, she shouldn't be really promoting this, It just looks like what her detractor said it was, her parents wanting to make her famous at any cost. They always rolled the dice, and that gentleman in Sweden was bang on the money. Bang on the money. Just sit back. He used the description of how kids were getting into a skate park, and so they filled the skate park full of sand so the kids couldn't play there. It's like just the bureaucratic mind, the mind of the bureaucrat, Just let them do their thing, and they will expose themselves. Like they said, you will like that Bible verse. If I can quote a Bible verse, you will know them by their works. And like I always say, I can't stress this enough. That during this whole and during your whole life, the people who make you feel relaxed, secure, happy, inspired, are the ones you gravitate towards. the ones who make you agitated and angry and want to bring you to protests and things like that, or are trying to whip up trouble and get you involved on their side. Look, no one who's telling the truth has to lobby to win people over. The truth is self-evident. If you have to lobby people through a smear campaign or through a promotional thing or a, a PR thing, you're a liar. You're a fucking liar. You're a fucking liar. And people will know a fucking liar when they see it. Because if you were telling the truth, you wouldn't have to fucking behave like that. And therefore, just sit back and let them take enough rope to fucking hang themselves. And they always do every fucking time. And they're doing it now at this COVID thing. And like I always said, this is education time. This is, you are now learning about the people in your life you want in your life for the rest of your life, and who you don't want in your life. And that's the ultimate, like, waking up, because you woke up yourself from the inside. You weren't part of a great awakening. You developed, you blossomed like a flower from within. And people talk about, love and all this stuff. The greatest love of all is to find your soul tribe. It doesn't matter what other tribes are out there. And when you find your soul tribe and you feel secure watching that and feeling that way, you're home, you're awake, and that's enough. And you will flourish, regardless of anything else. You will flourish. Never let them, like I say, don't ever let anyone not take the song from your heart, but never let anyone put a poison song into your heart. Remember, anyone who's trying to put a poison song tune into your heart is not being direct and honest with you. They're lying to you. They're lobbying. The truth doesn't need lobbyists. The truth doesn't need hysteria. The truth doesn't need grinning psychotics talking about negative stuff and some duper's delight. It doesn't need that. It is what it is. Take care, and I'll talk to you later.